Have you ever come home from a meal with other people and felt completely exhausted? Not because the food was bad, not because the people were bad, but because the whole experience felt like hard work? For many autistic adults, social eating can involve much more than simply eating food. It can involve sensory overload, social expectations, self monitoring, decision making, and masking, all happening at the same time. And that can be incredibly draining. Hi, I'm Dr. Jessica Bays. I'm a researcher in nutritional psychiatry, and I focus on how nutrition impacts mental health, particularly in autistic adults. Now, in my previous video, we talked about how masking can affect eating. And today I want to explore one of the situations where masking often shows up most strongly: social eating. Whether that's restaurants, family dinners, work lunches, cafes, birthdays, or eating with friends. Many autistic adults find these situations surprisingly exhausting. We'll talk about why that happens, what the research tells us, and some accommodations that may help reduce the load. When people think about eating with others, they often focus on the meal itself. But social eating is usually about much more than the food. Before you even arrive, you might be thinking, where are we going? What's on the menu? Will there be anything that I can eat? Will people comment on my food choices? How long will we be there? Or how much social energy will this require? Then, once you're there, you're often managing conversation, background noise, social expectations, unfamiliar foods, sensory input, and other people's reactions, all at the same time. That's a lot for any nervous system to process. For many autistic adults, social eating can also involve masking. So that might look like pretending a food doesn't bother you, forcing yourself to try something you'd rather not eat, acting relaxed when you're actually overwhelmed, copying what other people order, avoiding talking about food preferences, or perhaps hiding safe foods. Sometimes the goal becomes less about enjoying the meal and more about appearing comfortable. And that can be exhausting because you're not only eating, you're monitoring yourself throughout the experience. I also think it's important to talk about workplace lunches and group meals, because for many autistic adults, this is where masking around food can become especially intense. You might find yourself choosing foods that feel socially acceptable rather than the foods you actually want, avoiding eating in front of other people, worrying about comments on your food choices, eating quickly, skipping meals altogether, or spending the entire lunch break managing social interaction rather than enjoying your food. And often this isn't just about food. It's about trying not to stand out, trying not to be perceived as picky, difficult, antisocial, or different. So, what looks like a simple lunch break from the outside can actually involve a huge amount of self monitoring and masking. And by the end of it, that can be surprisingly exhausting. Research increasingly shows that autistic masking can come with significant cognitive and emotional costs. Studies suggest that masking often involves ongoing self-monitoring, suppression of natural responses, and constant adjustment to social expectations. And all of that requires energy. Research also shows that autistic individuals often experience increased sensory sensitivity and cognitive load in busy social environments. Social eating combines many of these demands at once. From a nutritional psychiatry perspective, chronic stress and nervous system overload can affect appetite, decision making, executive functioning, emotional regulation, and energy levels. So, if social eating feels exhausting, that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It may simply reflect how much your brain and nervous system are doing behind the scenes. One of the most effective ways to reduce stress is to reduce uncertainty. Some people might find it helpful to look at menus beforehand, decide what they'll order in advance, choose familiar venues, check photos of the environment beforehand, choose quieter times of the day, or eat something beforehand if uncertainty around food feels stressful. Now, these aren't about becoming rigid. They're about reducing the number of demands your brain has to manage. Accommodations can also help during the meal itself. For example, choosing a quieter table, sitting outside, sitting away from speakers, using discreet earplugs, wearing tinted glasses if lighting is difficult, requesting modifications to meals, or taking short breaks if needed. And importantly, asking for accommodations does not make you difficult. It simply makes the environment more accessible. I also think it's important to talk about safe foods. Many people feel pressure to order something adventurous when they're eating with others. But if you're already managing sensory input, social interaction, and masking, adding food-related anxiety on top of that can be a lot. Sometimes ordering a familiar meal is exactly what allows you to participate comfortably in the social experience, and that's okay. The final accommodation I'd like to mention is recovery time. Many people plan for the event itself, but they don't plan for afterwards. If social eating is a high demand activity for you, it can help to allow space for recovery. That might look like a quiet evening in, comfortable clothes, reduced expectations, familiar foods, or simply some alone time afterwards. Because accommodations don't stop when the meal ends. If social eating feels exhausting for you, you're certainly not alone. And it doesn't mean you're antisocial, rude, difficult, or overly sensitive. Social eating can involve a huge amount of invisible work. The goal isn't to force yourself to tolerate more discomfort. The goal is to reduce unnecessary discomfort where you can. I'd really value hearing your experience in the comments. What accommodation has made social eating easier for you? You might also find my previous video on masking and eating helpful as well. And if you're interested in more evidence-based neuroaffirming approaches to nutrition and mental well-being, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.